conversations we'll have from here on now as well. You've, again, studied the role of development, education, culture, and arts in both your personal and work places. And you founded Flowering Tree, which, again, is a US-based foundation whose mission is women's development and children's education in Asia. I believe, and I'm sure all the other panelists agree, that empathy and attentiveness come more naturally to women than they do to men. Sorry guys, but I think that's the truth. So one of the core principles you talk about is the integration of both inner and outer development of individuals. Could you please elaborate on that?
Good morning, everyone, and I'm thankful to be here. This is a wonderful opportunity to share different kinds of experiences in work. For me, my line of work is a little bit different from everyone else's. I'm in the world of what they call charity. This word has been a little bit troubling for me. I have taken a lot of time to learn what it means. I started my life in the work of human development in the corporate sector, where everything is about efficiency, and people are resources, and they align themselves to numbers. And over time, as I moved across continents and cultures, I became a mother. And I realized a very important thing, that you cannot, it takes 9 months to bear a baby. And you can't have 9 people work quickly to have a baby in 1 month. It doesn't work like that. We have to wait, no matter how much in a hurry we are, for the real development of a human being. And this thing was very profound and very powerful for me, that patience and just learning to listen became kind of the guiding principle of the work I do, which led me to founding Flowering Tree. And it's kind of based on this principle that you have a caterpillar, and just because we want the butterfly, and every caterpillar will turn into a butterfly, and clearly the butterfly is more beautiful, fully formed, wonderful creature, creates joy when you see it. But if one is in a hurry, or if just because we have the desire that these people need to grow, the caterpillar is a lesser being, and you cut open the cocoon of the caterpillar, well, the butterfly will never form. And these principles have been behind the work we do. So right from the beginning, we were very clear that it's the inner development that drives the outer development. How does that happen? Through listening. So every project, every work we do starts with going into an unknown space, meeting unknown people, and just listening. What's going on here? What do they feel? Where do they want to go? What are their aspirations? What are their goals? We never brought an agenda to the situation. We didn't say, oh, we are going to educate 300 people and give them so many books, which is a kind of inventory management approach to education, but that may not be what those people want. So it's hard, because you have to give up a lot of preconceived notions of what development might be, because in the end, every human being is going to develop at their own pace and in their own way towards their source and their direction. And that may not be what we may want for them. And that's one of the hardest jobs of anyone working in education and development. Teachers know this very well. I read something recently. There was some celebrity who was critiqued for making a public comment, and she was, oh, I know who that was. It was Princess Leia in Star Wars. So people critiqued the way she looked. And when she turned back and said, well, that's an unfair statement, they said, well, if you don't want to be talked about, be a kindergarten teacher. So the work of education and development is to become invisible and to let others develop. And so it demands a certain kind of work on oneself, where we don't bring our own issues into the space. And what does that inner development mean? It's constantly being aware of what motivations we're working with. Dr. Chow talked about Nishkama Karma. For us, we focus on, yes, we have to do good, but we also try to focus on, can we do less harm? Can we become a part of the process in a way that we are mere catalysts and the real work is happening outside? And to become that quiet and still inside while constantly working every day is a daily challenge. So it requires for quiet time, requires for introspection, requires for understanding what is driving us. And it's not always an easy picture to see. So it's not just how we see ourselves, it's also how others see us. And to constantly be humble and recognize that our reality is driven by both these things. And through that journey, it does become quieter over time.
Very nice, Sumita. That was really, I think I can relate to the roles of teachers. I mean, all of us can with me seeing my kids grow up. It's a challenge to have that being in that catalyst position, giving them, yet equipping them with the tools they need without necessarily influencing them to be adverse, I think is something I can all learn. Subha, coming to you, and person I've known most for over 2 decades now. I've stayed in various parts of Asia, and the first place I met Subha was in Malaysia almost 18 years ago. Again, as Suman said, he's a unique combination of a banker and a yogi. I think there are other things in there as well, which might seem contradictory, but again, I think it exists in him. And I've known him for when I think of Subha, I think of balance, I think of harmony. I think of him always as transforming the people and organizations he works in. So I think he's really brought all of this together in himself and for the people around him. So with that, Subha, again, you've worked across the region in multiple geographies. So yesterday when we were talking, again, after, it's surprising when you know somebody for 2 decades, you really don't talk. And when you're invited to host a panel, you really start to understand the people you know better as well. But I think one of the things that you spoke about yesterday, you used 2 words, self-care and self-leadership. If you could expand on those 2 and how you've applied them in business and personally.
Thank you, Vikram. Good morning to all of you. Namaste. I knew that banking was shrinking, and Sanjoy, I didn't know if you realized that over the weekend media became bigger than banking. So it doesn't get more material than banking. So I was a bit worried, okay, when you said media is most materialistic. But it's very challenging times that banking is going through. And there are 2 parts of this which are very important for us to focus on. One, of course, is what we see on ethics, on conduct, and how banking is perceived by the community, and how banking is perceived by regulators and by all the other stakeholders. And from within the industry, it's the challenge that banking faces on having to redefine itself to survive. On every individual is also looking, and it's not only translates to organizations, but at an individual level. Everyone was, Chandru asked me that, you were working in a place where there was a lot of transformation going on. I'm so happy to hear that you're still working there. So that's what it is. It means at an individual level, it has a lot of meaning, and at an organization level, it has meaning. But to me, the way I have dealt with this over the last 2 decades, and that's what I'm trying to take to my team and to my organization and to many others in the industry, is that you are the center of the universe. You are the center of the solar system. And if you address that you in the form of self-care and self-leadership, you will be balanced. And from there radiates the balance to your team, to your colleagues, to your organization, and to the communities that you serve. And when I mean self-care and self-leadership, I don't only mean the spirituality behind it. I mean that people and leaders need to be resilient, and that's a key word, from perspective of physical, mental, and emotional, grounded by spirituality. So if I don't have these components of resilience, I will always get thrown off balance. If I'm physically not resilient, I will fall sick. I will be stressed because I don't have the energy to deal with the challenge which is being thrown at me. And therefore, I may not be emotionally resilient. So physicality is as important as being able to show up balanced in a mental and emotional manner. So that's what I meant by self-care and self-leadership. And we were discussing about this interestingly. In the Yoga Sutra, we talk of the 8 limbs of yoga. We talk of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. To me, the self-care is asana, pranayama, and pratyahara. And to me, self-leadership comes in the form of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And through self-care and self-leadership, I am able to be connected with the yamas and the niyamas. So normally you start from the outside, and here I say start from the inside, start from within, start from what is in your control, because you don't have an excuse then to say that something else is happening and therefore. So it's about taking away excuse.
Thank you, Subha. Again, very interesting perspective. We all start at the outside and go inward, thinking that, I guess in some ways it's easier to look externally than internally. But again, I think we'll come back to it later in the discussion on how we can actually execute on some of this and internalize some of this. If I can come back to you, Jiman, and this is about your own transformation. As I mentioned, you transformed yourself 5 times over. Now in all of this transformation, and most of this has been in response to changing business environments and changing business needs. So what has been internally constant for you through these 5 transformations? What are the principles you use when you look inward and as applied outward?
As we speak, our business will again go for another transformation. Now, the Netflix back in Singapore, there's no advertising. So we'll have to really reinvent ourselves once again. We were born at the time when I used to go to my neighbor's house to watch the 1983 World Cup in a black and white TV. And now we are looking at the same. In my own career, in my own lifespan, I've seen the entire industry coming down to where it is today. I wouldn't say down, coming up to a situation where you don't want to have advertising. We're talking about ad blocking. So where does the industry go? There's no advertising, we don't exist. So that's a huge business industry that is at the cusp of its transformation. It works in 2 ways. One is, first of all, you have to be confident that this industry is going to survive. And second, you have to tell your employees that don't worry, it is going to survive. And they need to be with you, and they don't jump the ship and go to some other industry. I get inspiration from a book which I had read long time back, which looks at yourself beyond your waking state, dream state, and the deep sleep state, because you are not what you are when you are awake, you are not what you are when you are dreaming, and you are not what you are when you are in a deep sleep state. You are the common substratum beyond all these 3 states. I see a lot of similarity to that, to our industry. You have to look at yourself as somebody who is beyond yourself in your role, what you are doing as an individual, and your role, what you are doing for the organization and the industry. All 3, because all 3 are changing. Nothing is common. So if you look at that in that perspective, suddenly you realize that our business is about reaching people at the right time, at the right place, and giving them something so that they make a decision to buy your product. That's the fundamentals. And everything else is incidental in the whole thing. So once you get that principles cleared, you're ready to look at the world tomorrow where you don't need advertising, but I will find some other ways to tell them to buy my product. So that's the challenge. So that's how I look at myself, and we have changed 5 times. Yeah, I was from only newspaper advertising to television to satellite to online. I've seen people in our business retrenched every 10 years. I was always worried of getting sacked. You have to sort of change yourself every 10 years to remain afloat. And the joke I used to give is that when we were hiring people, we used to look at the curriculum resume and say that, no, they will say well versed in Microsoft Excel. And then we used to hire them because, wow, this guy knows Excel. And today we say well versed in TMPs. So what the hell? The world has changed so many times. You have to go with it. And the anchor is your fundamentals of the business. That's how I look at it.
Thanks,
I hope I
Shivan.
answered the question.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, my kids know what TMP is.
I don't know.
So, Dr. Charles, coming back to you. Again, you founded the East-West Group, and I think a big part of your efforts over the last, since 96 to 95, it has been to bring, do business and bring these various two perspectives together between the East and the West. How do you sometimes bring these seemingly conflicting things, business beliefs or practices, and how do you apply either conscious leadership or learning from these texts to such a situation?
Thank you again for the question. And now I must borrow the wisdom of G-Man. Basically, for us to exist, we have this inner firmness of purpose, our Sudharma. We must know why we are in this world and be very confident, and we put it in our vision and mission as connecting growth in the East-West Group. Now, again, to borrow from Sunita about caterpillar and butterfly, we cannot accelerate, we cannot make things faster than what they already are. And the challenge is really, we believe that we are instruments of God. And the fact that we are here, we are present here, we actually present, we are present here. And the important thing now, if I may just borrow a shokla from chapter 18, verse 14, it states 5 components of any action. You have the actor, then his aptitude and attitude, and the activity itself. But most important is this wonderful word called daivam. Daivam can be grace, can be opportunity, but we can't create it. It is there. And the fact I'm here is daivam, the act of God. Thank you. It's not juga. All right? So it's a little bit different. All right. Okay. So to come back, that is something that I must say, unlike what Subhav says, it's something that you can control from internal, and you look at things that you are an engineer of many things. I submit, to the circumstances. We have to change and adapt, but we are not the frogs. We must really know that are we potatoes, are we eggs, or do we need to be crushed like the coffee in order to have this wonderful aroma? Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Char. Sumita, again, I think being the only woman in the panel as well, and you having worked with a lot of women yourself in Flowering Tree, what would you, perspectives on, women as leaders? I think, whether women who want to, to invite these qualities of leadership or people who are already there, what can we learn from them, and what are your perspectives? And is it really different for you than it is for men?
Thank you, Vikram. That's very important and interesting question. A lot of girls growing up, me included, we didn't know we were women. We're people. So when you function like that in the world, our physical appearance is that of a woman, and you go out into the adult world and you discover that it's not how we feel as people, but it's also how others are going to see us in our physical being, and so they treat us differently, and they use language differently. and they'll use jokes differently. And so, it's a challenge for women when they are in positions of leadership, because the way people speak to them changes. And every woman will certify to that she's had that experience. And yet, that creates a real opportunity, because a woman knows whether she's in a private setting, in her family, or she's in a public setting, leading an organization or a public institution, that her language has to be inclusive. The way she appears creates an otherness, and it is up to her to create an inclusiveness. And in that, I see a lot of women as well as men who are thoughtful and sensitive, using the language of inclusiveness, where we see ourselves as part of a greater reality, interconnected, related to each other, similar to each other, not different from each other. So women are definitely conscious about this issue of otherness, if I may use that word, issue, and hence have a real opportunity to bring inclusiveness. And I think people who use that style of leadership are able to create a larger unity, always.
Thank you, Sumita. Subha, again, I think this is the last question of the panel before we move on in events. But I think, we all come to these events, some more than others. We connect, we hear these messages. Again, we leave and then we wait for the next event, and in between, I don't know how many of us consciously make an effort to be aware. So what do you, it seems very hard from my own personal experience as well, having known you, so many years as well. I don't think much of your magic has rubbed off on me as well. So how do you, for all of us, how do you internalize some of this? How do you, bring it all together? How do you practice this? If you can help us understand a little.
Thanks, Vikram. I'll kind of share something with personal and how I have kind of dealt with it. And I believe that if I can, so can everyone else. So, based on that, I would say that about 15 years ago, I started by having only fruits for breakfast. 20 years ago, I started to have 3 glasses of water when I woke up. 10 years ago, I started to walk and run. And then over a period of time, it became more running and less walking. I started to do 10 minutes of meditation 15 years ago. 12 years on, last 12 years, I observed 3 days of silence and solitude every year. So what I'm trying to say is that it's just a series of micro steps built one on top of the other. And that's the way, and it's just 1%, 1 apple, 1 glass of water, to make me feel that I have succeeded, and gives me the energy and the vigor to take the next step. So I think it's about making those small and not aiming for getting to 100% in one go. So it's about the journey. So for me, it was all about the journey. And in this, I used a formula, and very often we are very hard on ourselves. We aim to run the marathon in one day. We aim to do many things in just one day, and if not, we just give up, because we're very hard on ourselves. But the way I thought about this is progress, because it's a journey. And I used 3 measures. So I would say, I meditate so much, but why do I keep getting angry when I'm faced with certain situations? So I used a measure called frequency, intensity, and recovery. So if I got angry 10 out of 10 times, but today I got angry 7 out of 10 times, it may still look like a majority, but I made 30% progress. On a scale of 0 to 100, if my intensity of the anger was 80, but now it was 50, I made great progress. If it took me 2 days to recover, when I was really young, when I had real arguments with Renuka, I would not speak to her for a day, 2 days, till she came and spoke to me, but finally she never did, because I had to go back and speak with her. But today, I progressed that from 2 days to 2 hours to 2 minutes. So it's about letting it pass in the instant. So for me, I see progress, and that gives me motivation to stay on the journey and not to give up. And the last thing which I want to say is, normally we all say, we don't have time, we'll do this when I retire. I can assure you, when I look at my mother here, 76 years old, she still says the same thing, she doesn't have time. So the key here is that we will never have the time, but when I look back at myself, it's just awareness and action. If I look at a single day and a number of minutes I spend waiting for something to happen, waiting for the taxi, waiting for the train, waiting in the taxi to get to the destination, waiting for a call to start, waiting for a friend to arrive, waiting for my spouse to get ready, all of these things, right? So you're waiting for something to happen. I have at least 2 hours every day waiting for something to happen. Can I do something in those 2 hours so that the wait is a pleasurable wait? Can I be mindful at that time? Can I practice my breathing at that time? Can I pick up an apple and eat at that time? Can I drink a glass of water at that time? So if you just applied any of these 3 principles in our own way, and each one of us knows the answers, it's about being our own leader. And then I think we can start today and make it happen.
Thank you, Subha. Again, I think we're just about to the end of our time, but thanks again for that. I think in the panel today we heard various words, and I'll recap some of them. I think we heard internal governance, we heard inner and outer development, we heard resilience. We also heard that we need to defer to things that are outside our control, but again be aware of it. I think we've created enough chaos now in this panel, and to take Subha's words, and I hope Swamiji can then now come and simplify all of this for us. But I hope we've not confused you too much. But we're all around, and I think we'll have a session of Q&A after Swamiji's keynote address, and we can interact. Thank you again for giving us